Okay, here we go. Time to talk about the thing that hurts me in my tum tum very much. Look, no secret here on this channel, guys. You see it? Well, actually, not that way. That way, I pointed in the wrong direction. That's how out of it I am. I'm a Celtics fan, guys. You know, I bleed green, always will. You can see that. And man, uh, a week ago or so, I posted a video about a half an hour long. It was basically a rant as to how I was so angry that the Celtics had won Game 4, right? And the reason why, to sum it up, although I hope you guys still do check out that video, if anything, just because I'm sure some people just like to watch my pain, is to sum it up, the reason I was so mad was because I didn't want to have any hope anymore. I just wanted you to rip the Band-Aid off. I wanted to have a full off season where everybody was saying to fire the coach and to trade Jaylen Brown and to do all that stuff just like we do every year when we lose. Although this year there might actually be some merit. I'll get to that. Trust me, I'll get to that. But I just didn't want to have any hope, right? That was the whole. That was pretty much the summation of it. If I had to sum it up in one sentence. And I said on that video, and in public, and in private, and in every other way. I mean, I don't hide it, right? Is I wouldn't have hope until we won Game 6. And so the Celtics. I don't remember if it was the night I recorded or if it was the day after. I think it was the night of. I don't remember. They won Game 5. And they won it pretty convincingly and in a great game where they just dominated from start to finish. So that was great. That was fun. But again, I still didn't have any hope that they'd win the series and win a championship until they won Game 6. And then I watched Game 6. And, I brought my wife up a couple times throughout this podcast's lifespan, but I don't bring her up a ton. But I'm going to bring her up here because you can ask her, anyone on this channel, feel free to leave a comment asking my wife, is Tyler telling the truth? And I will answer for her, and you will just never know. No, I'm kidding. But the point is you can ask her, I cried like a blubbering 7-year-old girl. It was just, and not even out of, like, happiness. It was out of just, the game was so sheer chaos and so ridiculous and crazy and unorthodox. Every adjective you can think of to be different. That's what the game was. People made arguments as to who should have won the game. I argue neither team should have won that game. But if I did have to pick a team that should have won the game, it would have been the Miami Heat. Because the Celtics did everything to Kingdom Come to lose that game. They did. I tweeted it. I said it right after the game. The Celtics did everything they could to lose this game, and God just would not let them lose the game. For some reason. He wouldn't allow it. I don't know why. It was one of those things, I don't know. I said the Miami Heat should have won because they, at the very least, played fantastic in the fourth quarter. So, you know what? If you play fantastic in the fourth quarter and it's a reasonably close game, you probably deserve to win that game. So, Celtics tried to choke it away as best they could, and it just didn't happen. Derek White. Listen, what a turnaround that guy's had. There were Celtics fans calling for his head. I was not one of them. I love Derek White. I have always thought that he was a good fit in Boston. Would you have liked him to have been a better shooter last year in the finals? Sure. Would you have liked him to have a little bit better of a postseason than he had? Sure. Would you have liked him to not kind of disappear in the Philadelphia series for most of it? Absolutely. But listen, the guy was second team all defense this year. He had a really great year. He averaged 13 points on like 40% shooting from three. I mean, that's the best season he's had shooting-wise in his entire career. He said at the end of the season last year, I know what I have to do. I have to get in the gym and I have to shoot threes and I have to get better at it because that's what this team needs me to do. And guess what? He did that. He did everything he was asked. and more. He had a great season. He started sometimes. He came off the bench. He did anything that the team asked him to do, and he did it in a great way. So good for you, Derek White. That moment, I wish the Celtics had won the series if for any reason, because that moment where he tipped the ball in with 0.1 seconds left to win the game in Game 6, that would go down as one of the greatest moments of all time. It was crazy to me when I saw the stat that everybody who watches basketball, especially in the 80s, knows of the shot that Michael Jordan hit to beat the Cavs in Game 7 of the playoffs. Or I think it was the Eastern Conference Finals or semifinals. I don't know anymore. It was elimination game. I don't know if it was Game 7. It was an elimination game. He kind of readjusted in midair and shot it, and then he jumped up in the air and he's pumping his fists like that. Everybody's seen that clip that's watched basketball for even a year, probably, at this point. Everybody knows that clip, and if you haven't, look it up. You might recognize it. That shot and the Derek White tip-in that happened in Game 6 are the only 2 times in NBA history that in an elimination game, the team that was going to get eliminated had somebody hit a buzzer-beating, game-winning shot when they were losing at the time. There have been plenty, a couple of times where the game was tied. For instance, that Kawhi Leonard shot for the Raptors against the 76ers a few years ago. The game was tied at that point, so that does not qualify for this. Damian Lillard had just an amazing shot, 2 amazing shots, one against the Thunder, one against the Rockets, I believe, that won them the game and won them the series. The Trailblazers were not the team that was going to be eliminated if they lost that game. Against the Houston Rockets, I believe it would have been going to Game 7 with Portland up 3-2 in that game. And then the next time, I think Portland was up 3-1. So they weren't the team that was going to get eliminated at that point. So you're talking about Derek White's shot was up there with a Michael Jordan highlight that everyone knows in terms of playoff magnitude. That is insane. I had no idea those were the only 2. So good for you, Derek White. I hope, obviously, losing Game 7 is going to sour your offseason as it should in a lot of ways. But, I mean, I hope that he takes that moment and lives it forever because, man, that must have been so cool. And it was so cool to see for me, too. But let me tell you, I mentioned earlier I cried like a blubbering idiot. The Celtics were up by 10 or 9 with 3 minutes and 5 seconds left or something like that. And they just choked it away. They refused to score. They refused to do anything on offense. They couldn't stop anybody. They kept fouling. I mean, they were doing everything to lose, and they didn't. And once I got done composing myself, after about 20 minutes of just going mentally and emotionally insane, I realized that I had hope again. I had hope that the Celtics would be the first team in NBA history to come back from down 3-0. And all they had to do was play the way they've been playing and go onto their home floor and win. The Miami Heat, outside of Game 1 and Game 3, they didn't score more than 104 points, I think. I think it was 104, might be 106, but they didn't score more than 104 points in any of these games, guys. So, and in Game 7, guess what? They scored 103 points. Scored 103 points. And you know what happened? The Boston Celtics scored 84 points. The Boston Celtics went out after coming back from 3-0 down. Think about how difficult that is to come back from 3-0 down in a series. They had to win in Miami twice. And instead of finishing it off and being the history makers, they went out and did what I thought they'd do in Game 4, and they laid the biggest egg I have ever seen a team make as a Celtics fan. I should say the biggest egg I've ever seen a Celtics team make. Because listen, I'm not going to lie to you. Phoenix last year laid a pretty darn big egg in Game 7 against the Mavericks. I don't know how you could possibly lay an egg bigger than that. What did they score? 68 points in the whole game? I mean, on their home floor? That's a pretty darn big egg. I'm not going to be able to top that. This is not worse than that. That is just appalling. But this was the second biggest egg I've seen a team lay in a Game 7. Maybe even in any game in the playoffs that I've seen. Now, you could talk about LeBron's early years in Miami Heat, right, where he played some really bad games in the finals. Cool. The whole team didn't lay an egg, guys. If you want to even say LeBron laid an egg, you can. But their whole team didn't lay an egg. The whole entire Boston Celtics team laid an egg. Yeah, Derek White had a good third quarter for a couple minutes there, but look at his final stats. Pretty sure he shot like 5 for 14 and 2 for 9 from 3 or something along those lines. That's not a good stat line. Jaylen Brown led our team in points, but if you think he had a good game, not even close. He had probably the worst game I have ever seen a superstar have. Because, yeah, Jaylen Brown's a superstar, whether you like it or not, guys. You might not think so after Game 7, but he's a second-team All-NBA player. So at the very least, he is a bona fide star, if not a superstar at this point. So, guess what? I've never seen a star like him lay an egg as big as he did in that game. It was absolutely inexcusable how he played. Jaylen Brown had more turnovers than the Miami Heat had turnovers in that game. Miami Heat, for the entire game, had 7 turnovers. Jaylen Brown, by himself, had 8 turnovers. Every time he put the ball on the floor, somebody was swiping the ball away from him. Jaylen Brown, who has apparently been working on his handles for the last 3 years to try to get better, every time he plays the Miami Heat, he just gets stripped all the time. He can't hold on to the basketball. He can't dribble with his left hand. He can't drive to the left. It just hasn't worked. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself because Game 7 was over in the first 30 seconds. Jason Tatum rolled his ankle and that was it. You could literally hear the air go out of the arena. You could feel the air come out of the Celtics team. Their big dog was going to have a limp for the rest of the game, and that was that. Now listen, I'm going to get back to Jaylen Brown because he deserves a lot of fury. And he's gotten a lot of fury, and I know I'm a little late to the party here, but I haven't given him my fury yet, so I'm going to do it. Let's start with Jason Tatum. Last year I said I'm not giving him any more excuses. Last year I was willing to believe that he had something wrong with his wrist, and maybe that's why he didn't play well in the finals. But I'm not giving him a pass this year. Even though I kind of want to, because look, what am I going to say, right? I mean, I saw him play in Game 7 against Philly and drop 51 points. So I know he's a clutch player, and he can play like that in big games. I've seen it. He did it in Game 6 in Milwaukee last year, too. So, yeah, like, he can play big time in big-time games. I've seen it happen. But I know he also can lay an egg in big-time games, too. So, this go-round, this time, he rolled his ankle. It clearly was swollen. He was clearly bothering him. Every movement he made was difficult. He couldn't really guard Jimmy Butler anymore because the lateral quickness wasn't there. So, like, I want to give him a pass. I do, because there's not much you can do when you get hurt in the moment. He tried to gut it out, and he did. I mean, he didn't play well. He only had 12 points, but I mean, by the numbers, he didn't play as bad as the rest of his teammates did. I think he shot, 5 for 12 or something. I mean, that's not great, but that's not atrocious either. And when you're hurt, okay. But all that being said, I can't give him a pass because he wasn't there in games 1, 2, or 3. I'll give him a pass for Game 7. Fine. I'll give him a 1-game pass. It's not his fault the Celtics lost in Game 7. But it is his fault, partially, because the Celtics lost in Games 1, 2, and 3. If he is the best player on that team, in some way he has to be the leader. Now, from everything I've seen, and this scares me in a lot of ways, because I have always been a big proponent of if you are the best player on a team, you have to have some kind of leadership role outside of just being on the field. You can't just be the best player on the field and have no leadership qualities off of it. Because you know what? I felt like that was a big part of my life. Not necessarily that I was the best player on the field, but I was a captain in high school when I was playing baseball, and guess what? I had no leadership qualities off the field. I had none, and I hated myself for it. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to figure all that out, so I just said I have to play well in the field. And sure, it may have worked a little bit, but I still feel like I could have done more. You can't just be really good on the court and not have any leadership qualities in any other area, in the locker room, off the field, when people are hanging out, in the media, like whatever it is, you gotta have some leadership qualities. From everything I've heard, the leaders of that team have always been Al Horford and Marcus Smart, and they are not the two best players. In case you figure that out, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown are the two best players, and they are not the emotional leaders of that team. I mean, that's scary. Like, yeah, I'm not to say anything bad about Marcus or Al Horford. You can use the leadership qualities of other players. Like, guess what? Draymond Green, for the last 3 years, has not been one of the best players on that team. Yeah, he's a starter, but he's not been the best player on that team. It's always been Steph, and it's always been Klay, outside of when Klay was hurt. But those are the two best players, and they have leadership qualities, especially Steph, on the court. But also they utilize Draymond Green's leadership ability, even if he's not one of the two best players on the team. So you can still use the leadership qualities these other players give you, like Marcus Smart. His energy, his hustle, his defensive ability, his mostly timely shot making. That's all well and good. Derek White, quiet stoicism, but just does the job and does it well. Robert Williams is a defensive anchor. That's great too. But Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown need to be the emotional leaders of that team too. They can't just be the best players and then defer to everyone else. Now, I'm not saying that that's all they're doing. I'm sure that they have some kind of voice in that locker room. Of course they do. They're the two best players. But they need to be the two main voices in that locker room too. So, I don't know. It bugs me in so many ways. And, Marcus Smart didn't play well in Game 7, but I can't really blame him because he played so well in that series, especially Games 4, 5, and 6. He was the only one who made threes. I think Derek White made 1 or 2 threes in Game 6, and Marcus Smart made the rest. So, yeah, Marcus Smart, it's hard to blame him for this. He's done as good as he can at this point. Al Horford, I will say, as much as I hate to say it, he really stunk up the joint shooting the ball in the playoffs. He shot 40-something% from the field in the regular season. You thought he was taking a big step up in the shooting department. And then in the playoffs, he wasn't even missing by a little bit. He was missing by a lot most of the time. So, that's disappointing. Robert Williams his story continues to confound me. I've said this for years. Why is he not playing more minutes? I know he can't shoot. I know he jumps a lot and he falls for pump fakes a lot. But he's gotten a lot better at that. He was in the running for Defensive Player of the Year last year before he got injured. So you're talking about a defensive anchor that I know I've heard guys say there were celebrating happening when they found out Rob was starting because they like having Rob starting. He has the best plus-minus on the team. He's good when he's out there. Why does he not play more? Why does he get 20 minutes a night? I don't get it. Are you afraid he was going to get hurt again? Because if you're afraid he's going to get hurt again, then why did you pay him for 5 years to stick around? Now, I'm not saying, obviously, Brad Stevens is the one that paid him and Joe Mazzulla is the one that plays him. So, obviously, there might just be different mindset there, but I'm pretty sure if Brad Stevens goes up to Joe Mazzulla and says, hey, play Rob a little bit more, he's going to play him a little more. Brad Stevens is the boss, so, I mean, if Brad Stevens is the one saying, hey, let's ease Rob back, let's hold him back, it's the playoffs. What are you holding back for? If he gets hurt, he could just get surgery in the offseason. Now he's going to have a full healthy offseason, which is great. That's wonderful. But I feel like you could have done more with him. All that to say this, I know I talked about Jaylen Brown a little bit already, but I have to say this now. Jaylen Brown was the worst player on the floor in Game 7. I mean, he was atrociously bad. Horrible. And quite frankly, he was horrible the whole series outside of the first quarter in Game 6. So, what do you do with him at this point? I have no idea. Look, when the Celtics drafted Jaylen Brown, I didn't have really much of a clue who the heck he was. I knew he was athletic. I knew he was long, I knew he was rangy, and I knew he was a decent defender, and that was about it. He has developed his game in so many ways to be one of the best players in basketball. And so I respect that a lot. And he has gotten better every single year that he has been in the league. But Jaylen Brown has now been on the Boston Celtics for 7 years. 7. Jaylen Brown is not a third-year player anymore. And I know we make jokes about Jason Tatum always being 19 years old. But Jaylen Brown is not 19 years old anymore. Jaylen Brown is 25, maybe even 26 at this point, depending on when his birthday lies. I don't know when his birthday is. But Jaylen Brown, at this point, should not be having such giant holes in his game. For an all-star, for a second-team All-NBA player, he shouldn't every single year not be able to dribble. Maybe not necessarily not be able to dribble, because we've seen him have some good moves, and he's gotten better at putting together some crafty moves and getting good mid-range shots. Sure, but he can't dribble in traffic, especially with his left hand. That has been a problem for Jaylen Brown his entire career. His whole career, he cannot dribble into traffic with his left hand. And the Miami Heat, for the entire series, forced him to dribble into traffic with his left hand. And in Game 7, all he did was dribble into traffic with his left hand, and they stole the ball over and over and over and over and over again. So, at this point, it's hard for me to sit here and have much hope that Jaylen Brown is going to be a guy that I can count on in big games consistently. We've seen him have really good games and big games in big moments. In fact, in the finals last year, he was the best player for the Celtics, not Jason Tatum. And people were saying last year maybe we should trade Jason Tatum, which I always thought was absurd. But right now, I don't know what to think. I know I said at work at one point, if I had to trade one of the two, it might be Jason Tatum, because at least Jaylen Brown can play, is not so absurdly bad in these bad games that he has that he just single-handedly tanks the whole team, which I feel like Tatum has done a couple times. But then I saw Game 7 and I realized, oh no, he can single-handedly tank an entire team too if he has a bad day. Yeah. I saw that with my own two eyes. In Game 7, he literally sabotaged the Celtics over and over and over and over again. Whenever they get momentum, turnover. Or missed shot. Or terrible shot that he should never have taken. Or lets a guy go by him. Or loses a guy on a back cut. I mean, he completely... And it's not all on Jaylen Brown, obviously. It's on everybody that played. But goodness gracious. He came out on fire in the first quarter, didn't he? I thought it was going to be one of those Jaylen Brown games where he was going to put up 30 points and we were going to coast to victory. But then Jimmy Butler realized, oh, wait, just make him go left. My ball. Mine. Thank you. Just keep going. Steal. Yep. Perfect. Mine again. So what do we do? What do we do? I have no idea. At this point, I'm just ranting about Jaylen Brown, so I'll wrap it up with this. While my initial instinct when I saw the game was we have to trade Jaylen Brown right this minute because I can't pay him $300 million. I don't know what choice you have. I don't know what choice you have if you're the Celtics. I don't know how you're going to trade him. Because if you trade him after what he just did, you're not going to get anything for him. And if you think, I mean, the only teams that are going to even think of paying him $40 million, $50 million a year is going to be a team that's awful. So what are you going to get from them? Draft picks? No. The Celtics championship window is right now. Right now. You have maybe another year or two. But the problem is if you don't trade him, you have to re-sign him or let him go for nothing in free agency. And then for a 26-year-old second-team All-NBA player, and who knows what he's going to end up being next year, that means when he left for free, you got nothing. You got nothing for him. Do you really want to take that chance? But if you do not want to take that chance, that means you either have to trade him for who knows what, or sign him for $300 million. Look, I've loved Jaylen Brown, but he's not worth $300 million. He's not. He's not that good. You're talking about, at that point, you're a top 5 player in the NBA or a top 10 player in the NBA. He is not a top 10 player in the NBA. He showed that in Game 7. He is a really good number 2. That is what Jaylen Brown is. And I'm not sure if he can ever be a 1. Because when Jason Tatum got hurt in the first 30 seconds of the game, you would think that Jaylen Brown, realizing that he is Robin to Jason Tatum's Batman, would step up and say, okay, now it's up to me to lead this team to the promised land because my guy over here rolled his ankle and he's not doing good. And I've got to be the one that carries us, and I might have to carry us the first few games in the finals too while this guy recuperates. You'd think that he would think that. You'd think that he would know that and he would step up, but instead he realized he had to be the number 1. Miami realized he had to be the number 1 and beat him up for 48 minutes. Or I guess in that instance, 47 minutes and 30 seconds. Because 30 seconds into the game, that's when they went, well, Jason Tatum's not the number 1 anymore because he's got one ankle. So Jaylen Brown is going to be the guy that we have to focus on now. And all Jaylen Brown did was roll over and over and over and over again. It was awful to watch. Awful to see. It was like watching a car crash, but happening over a 2-hour span. You knew what was going to happen, you just didn't want to watch, but you had no choice. Oh. So what do I think the Celtics should do? I don't think they have a choice. I think they have to re-sign him. And it looks like that's what they're doing. I mean, it says that they want Jaylen Brown to stay. Now, if Jaylen Brown doesn't want to be in Boston, then yeah, trade him. If he doesn't want to be here, he doesn't want to be here. But I don't think they have a choice. Because your options are either let him go for free and see him possibly turn into a 30-point-per-game scorer for a team that's not very good. Or you trade him away and close your championship window unless you could get back somebody who is as valuable, which I don't think you're gonna. I mean, who did they trade him for? The only one that even pops into my head right now would be Damian Lillard, which I would love. He's my second favorite player in basketball already. He doesn't even play for the Celtics. I would love for Damian Lillard to come play for the Celtics. But you think that the Boston Celtics and the way that they play defense and the way that they run their team, you know what would happen to Damian Lillard in 2 games? He'd blow out his knee or he'd score 15 points a night. Because that play style is not suitable for the way Damian Lillard plays. Damian Lillard needs the ball in his hands all the time. Jason Tatum needs the ball in his hands all the time, pretty much. So, I don't know if that would mesh. I'd still love to see it. I'd still take the chances because I love Damian Lillard, but that's the only one that pops into my head that you might be able to do. You might be able to convince the Portland Trailblazers to give us Damian Lillard, move Marcus Smart to the 2, I guess, or move him to the bench and have Derek White start at the 2. I don't know. And then start double big. I have no idea what you're going to do if you're the Celtics, but I don't think they have a choice. I think they have to re-sign him. I don't think that at this point, I think you've invested too much time into Jaylen Brown to just let him go. Now, he might not want to be in Boston, and if they try to re-sign him and he doesn't re-sign, then that's a whole nother can of worms. But I don't think they can trade him at this point because Jason Tatum has said he wants Jaylen Brown here. Brad Stevens has said he wants Jaylen Brown here. I don't know about the other teammates, what they've said about it, if they said anything, but I'm sure Marcus wants Jaylen Brown around. They've been teammates for 6 or 7 years at this point. So, I don't know. I don't think you have a choice. I think you have to re-sign him. We'll see what happens. But yeah. That's it. That's my rant. Hey guys, me again. Thank you so much for watching one of my clips from the Lopes Goes Last podcast. These clips are so much fun to do. I absolutely love making them and I absolutely love doing them. And this podcast is my baby. So I really want this thing to grow and I really want it to succeed. So if you did like what you see, please subscribe. Also hit that bell notification so you never miss any one of my episodes or one of my clips like this one. And please do also like and share these videos with your friends and your family so that we can make this thing grow as fast as possible. And I wanted to thank you again so much. And I hope you guys enjoyed the video and have a great rest of your day.